Standing by is Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty's attorney Dan Lennington. Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty has been quite busy lately. So yesterday we were talking about the fantastic short documentary they produced on the misery of the classroom, the chaos and violence in the classroom for teachers. I highly recommend you watch that. This is entirely different. Dan is on the program to talk about the governor's flat out, not just rejection, but petulant rejection of an 8-1 Supreme Court decision that protects therapists from talking to young people about gender dysphoria in ways that do not automatically affirm and recommend affirmation treatments for trans kids. It's good to have you, Dan. So honestly, how does a governor get to reject an 8-1 decision by the Supreme Court?
Well, I don't really know. The letter was petulant. It was emotional. It was emailed to me yesterday on stationery from the governor and signed by the governor in response to a letter that we had sent the governor explaining that the U.S. Supreme Court on March 31st struck down Colorado's ban on Christian counseling, which the regulation in Colorado basically said that if you are a counselor and a patient comes to you and wants to talk about sexuality or sexual orientation, all you can do is affirm their gender identity and encourage them to have same-sex attractions. If a patient comes to you and says, I actually want to talk to you about my same-sex attractions and I'm struggling with them and I don't want to have those attractions, you are forbidden in Colorado from counseling that way. And that's what the Supreme Court struck down. 8-1 said that is a violation of First Amendment freedom of speech. Counselors have a right to speak and have viewpoints, and the government can't pick and choose what viewpoints it wants to support or what viewpoints it wants to outlaw when it comes to a business like a counseling business. Wisconsin has the identical law on their books. There is a regulation in Wisconsin that says if you're a counselor and someone comes to you to talk about sexual orientation or gender identity, you can't say anything that would attempt or relate in any way to changing behaviors or expressions of self or reduce sexual or romantic attractions or feelings towards individuals of the same gender. So the government, Tony Evers' administration is saying, if you're a counselor, a Christian counselor, and someone comes to you and says, I'm having attractions towards people of the same gender and I don't really want to feel that way anymore and I actually want to talk about that, Tony Evers is saying you can't actually talk about that. You can't do anything other than affirm and say, yeah, you should go out and you should express yourself in that behavior, and there's nothing wrong with that. And those feelings you are having of reluctance or shame and those feelings, you need to put those behind you and go live this same-sex attraction life. You need to go live that different gender ideology. And if you are a counselor who says something other than that, you're breaking Wisconsin law. Right. And so, we told Tony Evers he's got to abandon this regulation. It's identical to Colorado's. And he basically told us we were a bunch of bullying, hate-filled, right-wing lawyers in his emotional outburst in this letter.
Oh, he can send the same letter to Elena Kagan. Is she also an emotional, hate-filled, bigoted, lawyer? Because the one was Ketanji Brown Jackson. So the entire Supreme Court, with the exception of the dumbest one on the court, agreed with this. It's clearly a violation of the First Amendment. And Tony Evers is like, nope, I don't care. Who cares about the Constitution? But the whole point of this law in Wisconsin, it was less about I have same-sex attraction. It was more about I'm a woman, but I feel like a boy. And affirm. That, you're not ever, gender dysphoria is kind of the hot thing right now in therapy. And you're not supposed to, as a therapist, try to figure out if there's trauma. And that includes same-sex attraction as well. Is there any trauma that needs to be resolved? we should probably talk about why you're feeling this way, why you're feeling uncomfortable. But you're not even allowed to have the conversation. That's amazing. And that Tony Evers would not sort of see the logic of the ridiculousness of banning a conversation suggests that the man has no competence in being governor, and good riddance to him.
Yeah, it is. You can have this is why it's unconstitutional, Vicki, is the government is saying you can have the conversation as long as the conversation goes the way we want it to go.
Right.
And the way we want this counseling to go is you are affirming same-sex attraction, or you're affirming this new gender identity that you have, and it regardless of whether it's an adult or a child. So if a teenage girl, comes to a Christian counselor right now in Wisconsin and says, I'm struggling with my gender identity and I think I might be a boy, the only thing the counselor can say now, unless they want to lose their license, is to say, yeah, you probably are a boy. You should be a boy. You should dress like a boy. You should act like a boy. You should change your name and pronouns. That's the only viewpoint that is acceptable in Wisconsin right now. And that's why we wrote them this letter. We have told them that if they don't change their law, we're going to sue them. Tony Evers' response to yesterday, this is the real kicker. There's a lot of ad hominem attacks against Will, our attorneys, and our employees, but this is the worst one. He says, bullying LGBTQ kids and Wisconsinites seems to be an important goal for the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. Well, we don't bully anybody, and I'm sorry you feel that way, Tony, that you think that we're bullying, but the U.S. Supreme Court 8-1 said that you are bullying Christian counselors in Wisconsin by violating the First Amendment. And I think that the First Amendment is much more important of a principle than hurting Tony Evers' feelings, who spends a lot of times talking about sexual attraction of LGBTQ kids, and that appears to be one of his main efforts of his administration, and what he's going to do to encourage certain types of behaviors and discourage other behaviors about sexuality with kids. And you see this, trickling down through the DPI that he ran for many years, and all the scandals with teachers, and it's all coming home to roost. His views on sexuality of children in Wisconsin has been really ingrained throughout our regulations and our culture and our school systems. And now we're seeing all these stories about things happening in Wisconsin schools. And he's been the guy at the helm of this entire effort to sexualize our schools, to encourage transgender behavior and sexual dysphoria, and all of the mental illnesses that are going on right now is really laid at his feet. And all he's doing right now is standing in the way of Christian counselors who want to express their professional viewpoint about mental health. He doesn't like that because he's the doctor now. He's the healthcare provider now. Whatever happened to my body, my choice? Whatever happened to consulting with you, the woman and her healthcare provider should make this decision? Well, apparently not in Tony Evers' administration when it deals with sexuality. With him, it's only one answer, and that's you should have same-sex attraction and you should be a different gender. And if you don't say those two things, you're going to lose your license and your livelihood.
Yes, I choose for you what you're allowed to say. Overt encouragement. You're exactly right. And Tony Evers has a particular obsession, a weird, creepy obsession with promoting alt sexuality to children. And as you pointed out throughout the DPI regulations, which have just simply been maintained by Jill Enderle and expanded under Jill Enderle. But remember, he was DPI superintendent. It began under Tony Evers. And incidentally, all of the accusations of teacher misconduct against children, sexual misconduct against children, all of the reporting we have seen precedes Tony Evers as governor and occurred, at least the inception of these behaviors occurred while Tony Evers was superintendent of public instruction. Very strange, but it's an overt encouragement of alt sexuality. That's so. And how did we get there in Wisconsin? Because we didn't pass a law. This was a Supreme Court decision that said that the state agencies can write rules that say this, and the legislature can't do anything about it. I mean, we have a law because we have regulations that nobody voted for, written by people nobody elected. And is that what he's protecting? And he really wants to protect the fiefdom of the executive branch, maybe?
Yeah, we have this, it sounds nerdy, but we have this huge separation of powers problem in Wisconsin. It's the idea that the executive branch, the governor and all his agencies, get to write laws without any oversight by the legislature. And the legislature is powerless now to pause rules, to rescind rules, to approve rules the way they used to be able to do. That decision was overturned by the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and now we have, what they call in the law, delegation running riot. Basically, the idea that everything the legislature told the executive branch that they have permission to do, they can just do whatever they want right now without any oversight. So that's why, a lot of the power in Wisconsin has gravitated away from the legislature and towards the governor. I mean, the legislature can't even really do too much to change the budget anymore. We have this sort of self-perpetuating budget where that even if the legislature doesn't pass the budget, it just the money keeps going out the door. We keep spending the money. They can't even stop spending the money. So the legislature has been, I would say, not completely neutered, but as neutered as you can get in a state. And we have one of the most powerful executive branches among all of it. And the chickens come home to roost with these regulations like this, where they're infringing on people's First Amendment rights, or a debt cap where they're increasing the cost of selling a cow by 1,700% through fees. All these agencies getting into your life and your liberty and your business is something that voters have to think: do they really want to support 4 more years of this type of behavior?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I mean, but back to the whole attack of Tony Evers on the very concept that Christian counselors should be allowed to express their professional opinions regarding sexuality. It doesn't have to only stop at sexuality. I mean, the logic says that Christian counselors shouldn't advise against birth control or abortion. And this is a guy who actually attacked the Catholic Church a couple of years ago. Seemingly with an enormous amount of zeal to try to make it difficult for the Catholic Church to run what amounted to a charitable employment effort. I believe it was in Superior. So yeah, there's a strange hostility to the First Amendment, particularly with regard to expressions of faith and free speech in the state of Wisconsin. And by the way, the hostility also extends to the press, because conservative press are not even given press credentials to cover this guy. So it's I mean, each individual incident requires a lawsuit. He knows it, and he just, I guess, figures that maybe he can wear people out or break the bank, since you're a nonprofit, a donor supported organization.
Yeah, the Catholic Charities case was, they try to take away a tax exemption basically from Catholic Charities because they're a nonprofit and they are a charity. But the Evers administration said, no, we need to tax them like other businesses, and that went to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and they upheld the anti-Catholic position. And then a few months later, 9-0, the U.S. Supreme Court reversed the Evers administration and our Wisconsin Supreme Court. Yes, there is a lot of anti-Christian, anti-Catholic zeal among many portions of the executive branch. And, people, also there's this right to earn a living, your ability to run your business the way you want to run it. And, that's something that a lot of people can relate to. We should just, people should be allowed to earn a living, run their business, run their families, make decisions, have freedom to do what they would like to do. And we should be pro freedom here in this state. And apparently every week or month we get more and more restrictions on how you're going to live your life and how you're going to run your business and how you're going to run your family and what can you say and what you can't say. And those are things that we need to reclaim, and we need to reassert our First Amendment rights and our freedoms in this country, especially in this state. So, those things to think about as we come up on this 250th anniversary of American freedom, and what does freedom mean to us in 2026?
Well, in Wisconsin, we know what freedom means to the progressives, which are the Democrats. It is as they define it, as they go along. They don't like our speech. They don't like the fact that you exist. They don't like when people defend President Trump in a recount. They want to put my friend in jail for daring to defend President Trump in a recount. They want to force Christian counselors to trans children. They want to eliminate the very concept of motherhood in state law. They're attacking church exemptions. And by the way, that Catholic Charities Church was about employing, I believe it was developmentally disabled people. That's the progressives' definition of, I guess, what freedom looks like. Whatever we say freedom is what freedom is. And that's just not the way the Constitution is written, Wisconsin's or the United States Constitution. But I assume a lawsuit is going to commence, Dan. I assume that's the next step.
Yeah, next week we're going to be our 5th lawsuit we filed in 4 weeks. We're very busy, and we appreciate all the support we've had from the public, because we've had new hires, we have new attorneys now, increased our capacity. So we're cranking out lawsuits, about one a week now, and there's going to be another one next week.
will-law.org. It's a nonprofit organization. It's a tax-exempt donation if you would like to make one. Thank you very much, Dan, for joining me.
Thank you.